Alafia, Ashe, Ashe, Fanga Alafia, Ashe, Ashe, Fanga Alafia, Ashe, Ashe, Fanga Alafia, Ashe, Ashe.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to our very first episode, Mental Health and Resilience, Empowerment Squared. My name is Leo Nupolu Johnson, and I'm going to be your host for today. So that was just an incredible performance you just watched. And the djembe drum is a very, very special symbol that we will be using through most of our episodes. Now, let me just give you a brief description of what you just experienced. This beautiful drum is really a combination of three spirits in most African culture. We use it to evoke the spirit, the good tidings, the goodwill of our ancestors who have all gone before us. Now, three spirits. The first spirit is the spirit of the tree from which the wood was taken to make the drum. If you look at the body of the drum, the second spirit is the spirit of the animal from which the skin was taken. And the third spirit is the spirit of the person playing the drum. So these three spirits come together to make the beautiful sound that you just listened to. And the significance of it we will get into later is the fact that the harmony that exists, the wood or the tree, the skin or the animal, and the person playing the drum all had nothing to do with each other prior to this combination of what you just witnessed. But I had a great time and a great pleasure of having my good friend Mike Rajak with me. I will let him introduce himself and talk a little bit about his experience with the drums.
Yeah, thanks so much, Leo. Really happy to be here. You know, my first drum teacher, he taught me, that was one of the first things he taught me when he was introducing this drum, the spirit of the tree, the spirit of the animal, the human spirit. It's just like a sacred trinity. And so I've been drumming for quite a few years now. I'm from here in Hamilton. I'm a teacher. I teach kindergarten to grade 6 music at a school in Oakville. I've had a band, Rhythm Riders, reggae band, and we play around town all the time. More so before, you know, COVID happened, and you know, we've had to adjust ourselves. But I run a beginner drum class and work using the drum with young adults with special needs. I get them going with the drum and some other music, using some guitar, some songs, and physical movement, all attached to music.
Incredible.
So there's a bunch of different things that I've been doing over the years, and everything I'm doing these days is really all music related.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's been really great.
Thank you. So right before we go into real showtime, for the reason we are here today, our mental health and resilience series, we really got some good stuff in store for you. Do not go anywhere for the next 60 seconds. We'll be taking a quick break and we'll be right back before you know it. Again, my name is Leo Napolu Johnson. I am the Executive Director of Empowerment Squared, and like I said before the break, this is our first episode of the Mental Health and Resilience series. So I will be providing you a very good overview today of some of the things we will be doing over the next 10 weeks, especially when it comes to addressing the issues of mental health in newcomer communities, in marginalized communities, in racialized communities, especially places where this conversation is never held. We all know the issues of stigma. We all know the issues of service not being available to a lot of our marginalized communities when it comes to mental health. Now, COVID-19 has just made the situation worse. So where do we start? Do we sit and pretend like we don't know? Or do we start to have this conversation to reach people who may be looking for help right now as I'm speaking? So there are a bunch of things we will be talking about. I will be providing you a very high-level overview of the topics and issues we will be covering for the next 10 weeks. And I want you to promise me that you will be back here for the rest of the episodes to make sure that you don't miss it. Before I go into that, Empowerment Squared organization right in Hamilton started about 13 years ago now. We've been here working with newcomer youth and newcomer families, working with a lot of marginalized communities. And I can say today we've served over 2,000 families now in this community when it comes to academic mentoring, especially for newcomer youth, access to post-secondary education, sports and recreation, scholarships, sports and recreation, especially during the summer, so basketball, soccer, and a lot of other programs that we do. Some of you may have benefited, or some of you may know about it, but I encourage you to go to our website. If you need to know more, you will be able to catch a glimpse, a really good glimpse of the work that we do there. Before I go into our topic for today, I want to talk to you about something very exciting. Tim Hortons in Bingbrook reached out to us and wanted us to be involved with their campaign this year, the Smile Cookie Campaign. Some of you may have seen it before, or some of you may have heard about it. Guess what? We have to sell 50,000 cookies. Now, before you get too concerned, every single dollar raised from selling those cookies will be coming to Empowerment Square 100% to support the very important programs that we do. Now, let's get into why we're here today. The first thing we'll be talking about is pre and post migration trauma. Many of us don't realize, especially in newcomer communities, the issue of mental health is never acknowledged or not even talked about, or it's not even something we consider that exists. A lot of young people, a lot of families, before coming to Canada, depending on which refugee camps they come from, depending on in which country where there is war, or what type of traumatic situation they may have been fleeing, there is a lot of trauma that is taken in that is never dealt with before they get here. Sometimes even the process of immigrating is a problem, and that comes with a lot of trauma by itself. Now, when they arrive in Canada, the trauma of adapting, the trauma of integrating. Now, you might be wondering what trauma might be there. Imagine this, showing up on the shores of Canada with just the clothes on your back, having no clue, no network, not even knowing where to begin, having young children that are looking up to you for guidance. But that's just a snapshot. So I encourage you to join because this is one of the topics we will be going through. So make sure you set your calendar and your clock for next week. The second piece we'll be talking about is finances. Now, even as Canadians who've always been here for generations, you understand the stress levels that come with finances, everything from debt to paying your rent to receiving assistance programs like the CERB, the CERB, and full security. So think about newcomer families who come here and have to deal with the context and understanding of all of this in the matter of weeks, because you do not have the choice to wait for a very long time. If you don't get it right, you might get into trouble from the very first day. And from first-hand experience, I can tell you, a lot of newcomer families already got into trouble before even their first year ended in Canada. Whether it's bad credit, whether it's financial troubles, simply because they did not understand what they needed to do to get themselves on the right footing. Think about immigration loans. You get here on average as an individual is around $5,000 to $6,000. If you're a family of 5 with young children, it's about $30,000. So think about getting here already with a debt of $30,000 and having no clue how to begin even managing it. And the longer it takes that you don't pay, it leads you into trouble. So again, this is another topic we'll be going into much detail later on during the entire series that we will be doing for the next 10 weeks. The third thing is education. Back to school during COVID-19. Now, if you haven't gone through the trauma of just trying to figure out, should you allow your children to go back to school? Should you not? What are your rights? What can you do to make sure your children are safe? But what can you do to make sure the teachers, your family, what can you do to ensure that every day your children have to interact with a lot of people when they get into school? What do you do? Now, also another thing to worry about is the stress that comes with the worry every day that your child could have been exposed to COVID-19. And even the government or the Ministry of Education is even struggling to figure out how we put all this together. So again, we have some great discussions that will be coming up during the entire course of the series around how can we help families that do not even understand, read, or write English, that are not even being reached right now with the necessary information that they need to understand what they can do. The fourth thing we will be talking about, our fourth series, will be centering around domestic violence. This is something a lot of our communities, especially newcomer and racialized communities, do not talk about. Because in some cases, it's been normalized that it is okay for people to have to suffer domestic violence without seeking help. So we will be talking a little bit about this in an effort to destigmatize the issues around seeking help and looking for solutions to deal with domestic violence. We also want to talk about how do you prevent these things, and that is where we talk about mental health and resilience. How do you find coping mechanisms to deal with them in a way that you do not get into mental health crisis? Our fifth series will be building communities, business and social. There's a lot of isolation in our communities, especially in newcomer communities. If you do not have the right network, if you do not know the right people, even in normal times, the issue of building communities is severe. People don't have networks, their social, their business creating the right networks to ensure that their integration, their professional life is on track. We will be talking a lot about this, and we will be talking about some strategies and some of the best ways newcomers, marginalized, racialized communities can work around this. Our sixth series is the one I love the most, will be on parenting. Now, think about it. A newcomer family arrives in this country. They know everything they know from where they've come. No one tells them what happens in the society when it comes to parenting. And they resort exactly to what they already know. And then they get into trouble simply because they may have broken some of the rules, some of the laws when it comes to how parents should be able to raise their children in Canada. So we will be talking about this as well. And then we will talk about religion, the issue of religion and mental health, the intersection of religion and mental health. When is it a demonic episode versus a mental health episode? And I'm speaking from experience as a member of the Black community, as a member of the newcomer community, that many times we've seen instances where it is difficult to find a balance and understanding between religion and issues of mental health, especially during crisis. We will be talking about this and exploring how we get around this. How do we deal with this to make sure we are still on course? And our last series, the eighth will be on policing. I don't need to tell you the trauma and mental health crisis that is in our communities today as a result of interactions and dealing with the police. We will be talking about it from the perspective of mental health and talking about it from the perspective of how to deal with it, but how to also seek help whenever you find yourself in a situation. And of course, the last but not the least of our series will be on youth mental health. Many a times we talk about mental health in a very vague way, in a very generic way. But how do young people understand mental health? How do they deal with it when sometimes they cannot even speak about it? They often internalize it because in our communities, we're not aware of it. So we will be talking about youth mental health. So those are the 8 different series we will be covering, and we will have guest facilitators or we'll have guest speakers that will be speaking directly to these issues. Some of them with lived experience, some of them with professional experience in these areas for a long time. I have this question from a viewer that says, have you experienced trauma since migrating to Canada? I will speak for myself in my experience. Yes, I have. And here is the scary thing about it. I did not even realize I was experiencing trauma. I remember when I just came to Canada in my first 3 to 5 years, there were many nights I would not sleep. I did not sleep all through the day, but at night I would find myself up at 3 a.m. in the morning, having no sleep. Can I get any rest? Just feeling restless. At first, I just thought it was me being stubborn or me not doing something right. And I eventually realized that over my 9 years on refugee camps, I literally built a lot of things on the inside of me because I did not know how to deal with it. And they were gradually coming back when I started to have imaginations of certain things that I thought I had forgotten. So yes, I experienced trauma. And the scary thing is I didn't even know what I was going through. I thought it was normal. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people out there in different ways in the same situation. We have another question from another viewer that says, what steps did you take to overcome them? Now, I'm still trying to understand really what those steps are, but I will talk to you about some of the things that have helped me. And many people see me, those of you who know me, ask questions all the time. Oh, Leo, you don't stop. Why? How you just keep going? Where do you find the strength, the energy? For a long time, that became my coping mechanism. Every time I got out there, as long as I was working, as long as I was engaging with people, as long as I was helping people, as long as I was understanding the issues and how I could contribute to it, that allowed me to have my mind preoccupied with something that I was deeply interested in, and that eventually allowed me to not have the time to veer off into reflections of things that may have troubled me from the past. And eventually I started to realize I could do this more and more. But then I had to find a balance in between how I do it versus how I also take care of my own wellness. So yes, dealing with my own trauma, a good way to go about it was figuring out what I really love and I was interested in, and really getting deep into it in a way that became a healing process for me, rather than having to accept my issue of trauma and mental health as something that was normal because we don't talk about it in our communities. Thalia just sent in another question, and the question is, The way that we deal with mental health in Africa is different than in Canada. How will this series address these differences? Thank goodness I'm from Africa as well, Liberia to be specific. I empathize with that sentiment, Thalia, because I myself know that for a fact. In fact, I would like to take it one step and say the way we do not deal with mental health in Africa, we ignore it and we bring it down to a demonic attack. We bring it down to someone being crazy, all the other stuff that we actually bring it down to. We stigmatize people who are dealing with mental health. What Empowerment Square is going to change is going to be, first of all, ensuring that we are having the conversations and acknowledging that it is a problem. And then Empowerment Square will be working with our partners like Refuge Hamilton to facilitate direct support for people who need it, making sure our young people are not suffering in silence because they are afraid that they may be stigmatized when we talk about it publicly. So I like your question, Thalia. I couldn't have gotten a better question today in terms of the fact that, and you just even asking that question in the public for me says it all, that we can have a space that we can talk about this issue. We may think this is limited to just the African or racialized communities. You may be surprised in other cultural communities, it's also the same issues of stigma. Parents are hiding it. Parents are disowning their children because of mental health crisis. Families are disassociating themselves with family members because of mental health issue. We hear. And another aspect of it is the fact that the mental health sector itself is not diverse. People are not too sure as to how they can engage it simply because they don't find themselves represented there. I'm yet to go to any mental health institution, mainstream mental health institution, that we can see the level of diversity that's required to engage cultural communities. I think it's about time we start to work with our partners, whether it's the city of Hamilton, whether it's government entities, to ensure that concerted efforts are being made to make sure we can make the sector of mental health diversified.